Now we are going to continue with the second part of the meeting. We have two eminent guests, international, Olena Zimba, Associate Professor of Internal Medicine at Danylo Halytsky Lviv National Medical University at Lviv, Ukraine, and Dr. Armen Yuri Gasparyan, Associate Professor of Medicine at the Department of Rheumatology and Research and Development at the University of Birmingham, United Kingdom. Dr. Zimba is the Associated Editor of the Rheumatology International Journal, and Dr. Gasparyan is an editor-in-chief of the same journal with years of experience in peer review process, scientific publications, and ethical concerns. Please, Dr. Gasparyan, we can continue with your talk.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, first maybe Olena would like to give some talk on introduction.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Professor Ozgur for inviting us. Dear colleagues, friends, good afternoon. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar. It's a big pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker, Dr. Armand Gasparian, who is one of the leading British journal editor, clinician, and expert in bibliographic databases. Importantly, that he is non-Anglophone researcher with more than 100 English indexed articles and numerous other academic achievements. He is also an editor of several influential medical journals and an expert reviewer of Scopus database. And over the past 10 years, hundreds of non-Anglophone medical journals have been upgraded and successfully indexed by Scopus and Web of Science, thanks to Dr. Armen's contribution as a consultant. Welcome our speaker, Dr. Armen. Your first presentation is especially important about scientific authorship and contributorship. Please.
Thank you very much. Thanks for a kind introduction. And first of all, I'd like to express gratitude to Turkish Society of Pediatrics and Turkish Society of Pediatric Rheumatology. Special thanks to Professor Özgür Kasapçıoğlu for inviting me, and also to Professor Cesar Ozen for allowing us to join this webinar today, discuss important topics, important for junior fellows and also for seasoned researchers and scientific authors. So today I am going to talk about authorship, peer review, how to write articles, and to discuss some issues related to advanced bibliographic searches. Professor Kasapçıoğlu touched upon some aspects of ethical research, and he discussed structure of scientific article. I got some points from this important and very instructive lecture, and I'm going to continue. So allow me to share my screen with our audience. It takes a few seconds. Emre, everything is fine? Okay, so I think that, yeah, everything is fine. Again, sharing again. Okay. Yeah.
Click the PowerPoint icon on below.
You have to choose your presentation. Share.
type in the chat, and Dr. Olena will interrupt and ask, convey your question. Okay, I'm going to start my today's first presentation about authorship and contributorship. It's the first and the most important step of writing your articles. So you should divide your contributorship. You should decide your authorship at the start of writing your articles. And ideally, you should decide your authorship at the start of your research, at the start of registering your research protocol with Institutional Review Board. So, seni gördüğüme sevindim. Merhaba. There are some associations concerned with scientific authorship issues. Our junior research fellows should know about International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, Committee on Publication Ethics, Council of Science Editors, and World Association of Medical Editors. So I'm a member of WAMI, World Association of Medical Editors, over the past 12 years. And I've learned a lot about scientific writing, editing, evaluating research articles, and also about searching through bibliographic databases. And today I am going to share with you some of my tips how to write flawless article and how to survive peer review. So you should also know about Orcid Initiative. It started in 2014, Open Research and Contributor ID, which is digital identifier of researchers' scholarly or academic contributions. So you can freely register with Orcid and publicly display information about your previous academic accomplishments, like articles, peer review accomplishments, academic lectures, grant applications, etc. So today we should learn how to deal with scientific keywords, structured keywords, and you probably know that we all need to search with structured keywords from medical subject headings, MESH of National Library of Medicine. Authorship is one of the structured keywords registered with MESH, and it's profession of writing. So all those who are skilled in writing scholarly articles are named authors. So authorship is, you can see, three of other keywords. Authorship relates to writing, language arts, but also to plagiarism. So Professor Kasapchapur touched upon plagiarism and research misconduct. So this is serious violation of publication ethics, and all authors should be well skilled to process literature, to write articles, and to avoid any type of plagiarism. When we use this authorship keyword for searches, we should pay attention how many articles are tagged with this specific professional keyword. At the moment, there are around 6,000 articles tagged with authorship keyword. And number, you can see on the screen, that number of articles related to authorship is increasing. It's because of research cooperation, because of interest towards scientific authorship. So some countries are quite actively researching this topic. The rest, let's say in some non-Anglophone countries, do not pay so much attention to authorship. However, I strongly encourage our junior research fellows to learn more about authorship and to avoid all types of problems related to authorship. I often use Scopus database for systematic and comprehensive searches, and you as authors may also benefit from Scopus searches. At the moment, as of preparing this lecture, this presentation, there are more than 22,000 items indexed with Scopus and tagged with this specific keyword, authorship. We should also pay attention to items with high number of citations. Citations are important, but we should understand why these citations are so important. Highly cited items, articles, if they have numerous citations, it suggests that scientific community endorses these type of articles, and we may also take these articles as an evidence, a sort of evidence. So we know that some items are well cited, let's say clinical trial reports, systematic reviews. So with each scientific topics, we should pay attention to the list of items with high citation, absolute number, with high citation numbers. We should also pay attention to sources covering authorship issues. Let's say we know that Nature, one of the leading scientific journals, is concerned with authorship issues, and they published so far around 300 articles tagged with this structured keyword. There are some countries active in authorship research. So let's say United States, United Kingdom and Spain are top 3 countries publishing on authorship. There are some leading authors. We may also learn from their experience. So the same tip applies to all other scientific topics. All research fellows starting their research should pay attention who publishes most in their field of interest. We may also analyze research profile of scientists, and Scopus is one of the best databases for analyzing research profile, and you can see that we may pay attention to total citations of this particular author, leading author in the field of authorship, and also to H-index. H-index, you all know that it's a measure of publication activity and citations. So 26 means that this particular author published 26 articles, each of which is cited at least 26 times. Pay also attention to alternative metrics. I presented here some examples of authorship articles. Let's say first one is from Korea. They spotted authors published something with inappropriate authorship, and this type of inappropriate authorship from Korea was widely discussed on social media with, you can see here, Altmetrics attention score around 2000 or 1800. So, and few citations on dimensions. So you should gradually get used to these type of metrics. It's alternative metrics complementing citations. So second example is an example of corruption in open access. You should be well aware that there are numerous open access journals with poor or non-existent peer review, non-existent quality checks, and these type of open access journals simply charge authors without investing in quality of published articles. So these type of journals are tagged or named by Jeffrey Beall as predatory. And again, this is hot topic discussed on social media, particularly on Twitter. You see this blue part of altmetric donut, this round ring, and altmetric attention score is 561. It's a big number. Here is an example of authorship order and authorship in physics. This type of authorship is unacceptable for medics. So you see here alphabetic order of listing all authors. In medicine, we list authors based on their intellectual and technical contribution. Although we now deal with problem of authorship inflation because there are currently numerous clinical trials, systematic reviews requiring input of tens or even more numerous authors. This is why you see that over decades, past decades, number of authors on average increased from 3.5 to 9.3 for single-center randomized controlled trials. The same refers to multi-center randomized controlled trials. So we deal with authorship inflation. But anyway, who is first? Who is the main, the most important authors in biomedical authors? Of course, those who contributed most and contributed with innovative ideas, creative ideas. So usually leading senior authors contribute with their novel, innovative ideas, creative ideas, or push research by advising how to perform research, how to avoid common mistakes. And this type of support by supervisors, by heads of department is important. And this is why they deserve authorship in biomedical articles. Now, who do not deserve authorship contribution and who can be simply listed as contributor in the acknowledgement list? Usually those who merely secure funding or recruit patients. Technically, it's technical work, not scientific. Those nurses who simply do technical work, collect tests, or statisticians who simply mathematically analyze data without understanding scientific meaning of research and articles, and supervisors who simply supervise, control their younger authors without checking articles, without revising, or without guiding their junior authors. So this type of authorship also should not be considered as authorship. It's contributorship or deserves acknowledgement. And in US, there are many medical writers who simply write on behalf of supervisors, scientific authors, and they are not experts. They simply correct language. This type of contributorship also deserves only acknowledgement, but not listing in author bylines. Who are usually first in author bylines? Who should be listed first? Usually junior research fellows, or those who contributed most, those who write first draft of articles. These type of contributorship should be listed first. And last authors are usually supervisors, heads of department, those who due to lack of time do not collect data, do not do laboratory tests. They supervise, they revise scientific papers and advise junior fellows to avoid common mistakes. Who are corresponding authors? It's also important to know that corresponding authors are responsible for post-publication communication. So if they receive invitation to review or to comment on their published articles, they should immediately respond. And as experts, they should explain everything about strengths and limitations of their article. And of course, all authors should have ORCID ID, Open Researcher and Contributor ID. It's important for visibility. important for ethical component of research article, and important for post-publication promotion of articles. For decades before open access era, post-publication promotion was not so important, but now we live in the era of open access and we should pay more attention to post-publication promotion. All author profile identifiers like Scopus Author ID, ResearchGate, Web of Science Research ID, even Mendeley profile, social media profiles like Twitter and Facebook are important for composite profile of a researcher. So Orcid ID is important for name disambiguation. Let's say in England, there are hundreds of thousands of scholars with the same name. Let's say John Smith is popular name in England or in Western world. But if these John Smiths have specific digital ID, they will not have any problem in their scholarly articles, and it will be easy to recognize their scholarly contribution. I published an article years ago and highlighted some points how we should distinguish author contributions, which author profiles are important. Here, I just would like to draw your attention to Orcid ID, popular PubMed ID, Scopus Author ID, and Web of Science. These are main profiles, research profiles, important for distinguishing scholars with substantive research contributions. And you probably also know that there are some rheumatology journals, let's say Journal of Rheumatology, they regularly publish editorials. These are also important for profile, research profile, and they usually put photographs of these experts. So for research profile and for distinguishing researchers is important to have scholarly head and shoulder photograph. All startup journals that going to publish editorials should pay attention to this critical moment, should have photographs of leading scholars. There are numerous problems with inappropriate authorship, even at leading journals. Let's say Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine. But there was a research, and they analyzed different types of articles and noted that some articles, let's say a research articles contained numerous problems with authorship, inappropriate authorship, and it happened in 25% of cases. In review articles where number of authors less, inappropriate authorship was spotted in 15% of cases, and in editorials where number of authors limited to 1 or 2, inappropriate authorship was much less, just 11%. So you can see that with higher number of authors, we have more problems with authorship. So we should be very careful with this type of issues and should avoid. There was a research also in Iran years ago, and they noted that in leading public health journals, they had 90% of inappropriate authorship, or it's called otherwise honorary authorship. So these journals paid attention to these authorship issues and avoided gradually this type of issues. How to spot authorship problems? It's easy. If you see unfeasibly long or unrealistically short authorship lists, you can suspect problems with authorship. Let's say in case report, you see small case report and 10 or 20 authors. You should ask, or editors should ask authors to check authorship contributions and correct their mistakes. Some journals, let's say one of Croatian journals with good publication ethics stance, they request authorship contributions online at the submission of their manuscript and avoid a number of problems later on. There are some good examples of authorship declarations. I took these examples from Arthritis and Rheumatology, one of the leading or one of the top rheumatology journals. You can see that they describe each co-author's distribution. So these type of examples are important. Pay attention to these examples and learn from these examples. There are also some other examples, more related to today's presentation, let's say familial Mediterranean fever. You see Professor Cesar Ozen is one of the co-authors of this influential article related to Yersinia pestis, Black Death, and familial Mediterranean fever. And you see how they disclose their authorship contribution in detail. It's a cooperative work, and each of these co-authors substantively contributed to this important article in one of the top immunology journals. But now pay attention to another example, more recent example, more related to 4 authorship criteria. We have 4 authorship criteria. First one is substantive contribution. Second criterion is participation in revision. Third one is approval for publication. And fourth criterion of authorship is responsibility for all aspects of scholarly work. You can see that I highlighted how these authors disclosed their adherence to 4th criterion. All authors agree to be accountable for all aspects of work. And now you should memorize 4 criteria of authorship accepted by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors in 2013. So you see that all these criteria are important, and all co-authors listed in author bylines should meet all 4 authorship criteria. Now we live in the era of multi-authorship research, and we should also consider contributorship issue. There are so-called kilo or 1,000 names in research. So how to divide authorship contributions, how to report this type of authorship? Easy, if you know that we are gradually moving from ethical authorship to ethical contributorship. Years ago, in 1991, one of the leading specialists who published a letter in Nature, he highlighted an important point related to authorship contribution. He discussed 100% contribution. So whole article equals to 100% of contribution. Those satisfying or contributing to an article at least 25% deserve authorship. Years later, the same concept was presented instead of 100%, just 1 point. So you can see here an example of authorship disclosure in author's byline. First author is author with 0.4 contribution, the highest contribution. When we take the whole contribution 1, this author is listed first because he contributed most. And finally, there was 1,000 point criteria concept. The idea is the same, but simply they changed points because they provided more detailed approach to contributorship. So all scientific authors should know how they contributed to an article. And my approach is also to learn all editorial guidance, to adhere to editorial recommendations of leading organizations, and to know how to disclose authorship contributions, how to report contributorship in percentages or in points. So authors should familiarize with these important editorial guidelines. I published this article years ago in Rheumatology Journal, so it was well accepted by the whole rheumatology community, and now I know that these type of articles are very instructive, very useful, and may aid junior researchers and even seasoned authors to avoid a number of ethical problems. So I'm glad that I've been in Birmingham since 2007, and I contributed a lot to my department, to supported my fellows, my colleagues, and now I'm open to questions. If you have any questions, please ask. I would be happy to respond to these questions. So over to our moderator. Any questions so far?
Dr. Armen, thank you very much for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
We have one question from our participants. Armen, you are one of the experienced journal editors who consulted hundreds of biomedical journals and improved their instruction. Are there any specific requirements for rheumatology journals in terms of scientific authorship and contributorship regulations?
Thank you for excellent question. So authorship requirements are applicable to all scholarly journals. But there is one nuance, one small point related to rheumatology and immunology journals. In rheumatology, we have a lot of articles with related to drug therapies, related to cooperative research. So sometimes it's not so easy to adhere to all 4 criteria, because let's say some professors, some supervisors contributed with ideas, and due to lack of time do not pay attention to first draft. So these type of small points are important, relevant to the field of rheumatology, where we have cross-country and interdiscipline research. So we should be very careful with when scholars from different disciplines cooperate. There can be a conflict between, let's say, rheumatology and statistics, or rheumatology and cardiology, because approaches to research and authorship have slight differences. So this is why I suggest to think more about contributorship. And if you have any specific questions, if you are in doubt, please ask research expert like me, experienced in research, in writing, in research cooperation. Thank you for excellent question.
Thank you very much. It looks like we cover the most important issues about scientific authorship and contributorship, and we can switch to your next presentation about peer review.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's continue.
Yes.
Peer review. Is it so easy to survive peer review at top journals? Can you hear me? Everything is fine?
Yes, everything is
Okay,
fine.
good.
You can share your presentation with us.
It's not shared?
Not.
Okay, so...
Please share your screen and your presentation with us.
So I should do it each time, I see.
Yes.
Sorry about that. It will take a few seconds. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen and I can see your presentation.
Good.
Yes,
Okay,
everything is okay.
Follow me, yeah. And interrupt me if there is any problem. Peer review. We are going to discuss peer review related to research and journal publication. It's not so easy to survive peer review at top or high rank journals, rheumatology, pediatrics, general medical journal, because research evaluators or peer reviewers are highly skilled. They pay attention to a number of issues. We are going to discuss some of these issues. So again, please familiarize yourself with my approach of processing information from bibliographic databases, particularly from Scopus. So far, around 9,000 articles are published, tagged with term or keyword peer review. We pay attention where all these articles are published. Nature is top journal covering peer review related research. There are also some highly cited research articles. We should also learn, delve deeper into these articles and learn important points. I often pay attention to a publication activity related to any topic, and in this particular case, I pay attention to annual publication activity related to peer review. You can see that number is increasing over the past decades, and peak publication activity with more than 600 articles tagged with peer review was recorded a few years ago. It means that, and we can see that there is an exponential increase of number of articles. So research community paying more and more attention to peer review. We should pay attention to leading authors who are concerned with peer review. You can see that there are some, let's say David Moher from US, who published more than 45 articles tagged with peer review. Of course, Lancet, PLOS ONE, BMJ, British Medical Journal, these are journals often publishing articles related to peer review, and you see that I used specific term that narrowed my scope of interest related to this specific presentation: peer review and publishing. So I used two keywords to narrow my scope of interest within the frames of this presentation. So we should pay attention when we search Scopus. We should pay attention to keywords related to our main keyword. Peer review is tagged in more than 7,000 articles, but there are also publishing, publication, periodicals are as topic. So these are important, top 10 important keywords that help us to analyze the whole field related to peer review. Again, you see, I am paying now attention to altmetric score. This specific article related to nepotism and sexism in peer review was highly commented on Twitter with 240 tweets, and you can see it's blue part of altmetric donut. This type of information is gaining momentum in the era of open access and in the era of switching to online education, research, publication, and post-publication communication. So pay also attention to map of social media activities. You see that dark blue part is US. So Anglophone researchers are quite active on Twitter, and they tweet. This type of information is processed by bibliographic databases, and you will see how they do it, how it's important. So you should gradually use to this type of research and post-publication promotion. Again, you should know as researchers and some journal editors that there are editorial associations dealing with peer review, integrity, or ethics in peer review. Council of Science Editors, it's US-based association. International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, WAMI, World Association of Medical Editors, COP, and also Office of Research Integrity in US. So now, there are two important recommendations for journal editors, and I strongly encourage our today's participants, senior colleagues, editors, to read entire recommendations, whole recommendations from Council of Science Editors and International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. By reading and following updates, particularly annual updates from International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, you may improve your scientific communication skills. So, sometimes I also pay attention to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is also a popular social platform, and I should pay attention how peer review is perceived by popular media. Peer review is a process of self-regulation by any profession. So if we do not have peer review or evaluation system, our discipline cannot survive, cannot stand test of time. So we should always rely on quality peer review. Now, again, I pay attention to peer review as a structured keyword registered with MESH. And if I know how this specific term is tagged by National Library of Medicine or MESH vocabulary, I can use this structured keyword and I can retrieve relevant articles. My dear fellows, my dear participants, please pay attention to this slide. Please use specific keywords for your structured searches and for your comprehensive literature searches. Knowing how these keywords are registered is important. So now I choose peer review research, which is more relevant to today's presentation than peer review or peer review in healthcare. So I use research peer review related to journal articles. Now, as editor myself, I know that I am ultimately responsible for choosing the best and most active reviewers. And I do that. I always choose skilled or professional reviewers who are ethical and who can donate time and efforts to evaluate articles. Authors sometimes also act as reviewers, and you know that corresponding authors usually act as ad hoc reviewers from time to time. So, and they should also know that there is a crediting system named Pablon's platform, which is used for promotion of reviewers. And nowadays, peer review is based on profile of peer reviewers on Pablon's. We pick these reviewers from Pablon's and from other databases, but primarily we evaluate their profile on Pablon's platform. Peer review is critical, and we know it's from guidance of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Peer review is critical for research evaluation. It's also important for quality of journal. You know that there are some predatory or substandard journals without peer review, and they do not have any reviewer pool. So no one knows how they evaluate articles, how they process, and how they publish without any peer review. So if a good journal, that journal should rely on quality peer review. And of course, chief editors or handling editors are ultimately responsible for peer review and final selection of content. Peer reviewers sometimes are too ambitious and they think that they recommended something, let's say rejection, without any comments. Chief editor should take blindly their recommendation. No way. Handling editors usually rely on reviewer comments, but ultimate decision rests with their own evaluation. Peer reviewers are experts chosen by editors. And the whole concept of peer review is just to improve research reporting, to avoid problems with poorly readable, poorly understandable texts, and to avoid also problems with statistics, with graphics. Not always it's the case. So sometimes even peer reviewers miss some important points. So article is published with some mistakes, and after publication readers spot some problems. And in that case, investigation starts, and usually it's an honest mistake by editors, by peer reviewers, and most importantly, by authors. Authors are ultimately responsible for their published articles. They knew all points, all aspects, and when they sign authorship agreement, they claim that they're responsible for all aspects of research and writing. So be very careful. Now, two examples of peer review. First example is Crick and Watson's article, which was published in 1953 without peer review. So Nature chief editor in 1953 accepted article, small piece, it was just one short letter, without sending to external peer reviewers. That was a brave move by chief editor, and it turned to be a success. Article was published, and Crick and Watson got their Nobel Prize in 1962 for their valuable, though non-peer-reviewed article. But there is also another story of Nobel Prize winner. In 1937, Hans Krebs, who proposed idea of ATP and carbohydrate degradation and synthesis of energy in cells, he submitted an article to Nature, which was rejected after peer review because of reviewers' suggestion that that manuscript was insufficiently important. So it was rejected initially, later published in small Enzymologia article journal, Dutch journal, small Dutch journal, but it turned to be an important step in biochemistry and clinical medicine. So the author got Nobel Prize in 1953, and later on the same article was republished in Phelps Letters, the main or top journal for biochemists. So some mistakes with peer review also take place. Peer review is usually a service to profession. So all scholarly authors at some point may be invited to act as reviewers, and it's an honor to respond to that reviewer invitation. Peer review keeps specialists updated. It's intellectually enriching. It gives credits, particularly nowadays we have Pablon's platform, and these platform is now part of Clarivate Analytics. So you see that prestige of that Pablon's platform is important, and peer review accomplishment is considered as short publication unit, published unit. Who are best reviewers? Usually those who are good at statistics, who acted as reviewers before, so have some experience of research evaluation, those who are active in publishing with articles indexed with Scopus, Web of Science, Medline, PubMed. Sometimes authors may suggest reviewer names, but reviewers, editors usually pick reviewers from Pablons, from reference list of submitted manuscripts, and nowadays they rarely rely on author-suggested candidates. Editorial board members should take part in peer review, And if they serve on peer review, on editorial board, they should actively respond to editors' review invitation and provide unbiased and evidence-based quality review evaluations. Editors sometimes have their list of best reviewers they know based on their previous accomplishments, and it's usually an honor to be invited to review continuously. Statistical reviewers usually take part in peer review at top journals like Lancet. I know from my own experience, because I took part in editorial board meeting of Lancet in 2010, and I noticed how Lancet editors and handling editors were evaluating articles, and they were paying attention to statistical review and evaluation. So if let's say we have evidence that if statistical review is involved in research evaluation, quality of article increases at least 5 times. Reviewers should pay attention to these important points: sample size calculation, normality distribution of all parameters, and if there is an issue with linear or logistic regression analysis, they should understand confounding factors. So this is the best example how reviewers should evaluate statistics. They should pay attention to sample size calculation if there are analogs or previous studies related to the manuscript in evaluation. Reviewers are usually supported throughout peer review by Scopus Access, by Web of Science Access, and they also should be provided with structured reviewer form to avoid problems. Sometimes junior researchers are invited to act as reviewers, and they mixed comments for review for editors with those for authors. So they should be very careful with what they convey to authors, and there should be consistency in their comments to editors and to authors. Which are elements of successful review? Usually, busy clinicians, please, they should respond to review invitation as soon as possible, within 2 days. They should keep all communications confidential. There is no need, and it's unethical to disclose everything with colleagues, to share manuscript under evaluation, or to benefit from manuscript under a peer review, share it with your PhD fellows, friends, and ask them to push their research. And that's unacceptable. That's considered as plagiarism of ideas, and it's easy to spot it. So be very careful, especially young junior researchers who act as reviewers. Always try to keep confidentiality, be objective. If you say something, always refer to evidence, to relevant references, never add something just a priori, and also consider adherence of authors to Equator Network reporting guidelines. Reviewers should know which type of submitted articles are of high priority. Let's say years ago, I revised instructions for authors of Croatian medical journals. It's one of the leading Balkan or European journals, and they have strict criteria of originality, of priority based on article types. If you see a top priority article, you should try your best to provide specific comments and recommend acceptance or rejection based on priority. So now, what type of review models are acceptable? You all know about internal without peer review. It's unacceptable for most scholarly journals. You know about external when all article submissions are referred to external reviewers, internal and external mixed. Then single blind, when author's identity is not blinded and reviewer can see author's identity. Double blind, when reviewer and author's identities are masked. And open, when everything is open, publicly displayed reviewer comments. And it's one of the most acceptable modes for, let's say, BMC publisher, London-based publisher, or open access publisher. Reviewers suggest something, and editors can accept or reject outright. First of all, the editors can reject without any review comments based on priority, but usually they make decision based on 2 or more review comments, accept or reject based on at least 1 strong review comments. That's acceptable if editor receives 1 strong review comment, and others are not so strong, vague review comments. So always editors rely on strong or substantive review comments. Here is an example from top rheumatology journal, and pay attention to peer review timelines. These are important: date, day, month, and year of submission, revision, and acceptance is recorded. So, and you can see that article is submitted in May and accepted in June. So it's relatively fast-track peer review because it's an important article. Fast-track peer review is acceptable for top journal. Now, how reviewers prioritize submissions? So first of all, target journal issue is important. Authors target journals based on some criteria. Let's say impact factor, indexation, relevance, coverage by social media. And you see that Turkish Archives of Pediatrics is one of the best regional journals, ongoing developing journal, and they accepted social media importance, and they promote articles post-publication on this important channel. So I value high, and this is important for attracting social media attention, comments, mentions, and boosting alternative metrics. So today's moderator, Professor Zimba, Dr. Zimba, she is one of the skilled specialist reviewer and also post-publication evaluator, highly active on Twitter and other social media channels. So I would encourage you to learn from her experience. I personally learn a lot from her skills, from her advice on post-publication promotion. So now about Scimago Journal and Country Rank. Junior fellows should know that there is a ranking of journals based on their citation metrics based on Scopus. You see Rheumatology, you see Pediatrics, you see difference in numbers. There are 64 Scopus index journals with metrics, Scopus-based metrics, and there are 310 pediatrics journals with different scope and with different values of citation metrics. Differences are important, interdisciplinary differences. I paid here also attention to local journals. You see, you have 239 Scopus index journals with citation metrics visible on Scimago Journal and Country Rank. Please familiarize yourself with all these important metrics and relevant journals, relevant to your specific field of interest, and you can continue. You see here 2 important journals, again, Pediatric Archives and also Journal of Pediatrics. They have their own gradually increasing citation metrics. But these are relatively young journals compared to other journals with years of experience. So it takes time to attract citations and also social media. Now, some information from Web of Science. And I understand that it's so difficult for researchers who do not have access to all subscription databases. So they now have free access to some information from Web of Science, and particularly they can evaluate, let's say, Journal of Pediatrics, latest metrics, they can evaluate profile, and reviewers should also pay attention to this type of metrics. Peer review process should be displayed on journal websites. So here I presented one of the best open access publishers with displayed metrics. You see, they display deadlines from submission to first editorial decision, 90 days. And they also display percentage of rejection rate, 84 rejection rate. When reviewers write their review comments, they should pay attention to the following points. General comments, brief, just one line. Major comments, more important, one paragraph. Minor comments, let's say linguistic correction, and confidential information on acceptance conveyed to editor. This part of information should not be conveyed to authors, only to, confidential information only to editors. When we detailize our comments to authors, we should also evaluate the relevance of manuscript. We should evaluate title, how concise it is, reflective or non-reflective titles, correct or with some mistakes, structured or unstructured, abstract. Structured, abstract is important. So journal editors and reviewers as well pay attention to abstract and sometimes suggest to revise abstract. Reviewers pay attention to novelty. Nowadays, novelty is lacking in most research article submissions. So editors and reviewers pay attention to methodology in the first place. But novelty is one of the acceptance criteria in top journals. Let's say Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, or in your field, Journal of Pediatrics. So novelty is important for high-rank journals. Reviewer comments sometimes should be too detailed, too specific, and these tips are important. If it is laboratory study, when and where tests were collected. Language mistakes. I'm not going to discuss all these mistakes, but I should emphasize that non-Anglophone authors are not good at English, and sometimes they refer to commercial editing agencies. If that's happens, acknowledgement to editing agency should be listed in acknowledgements. But my approach is to improve authors' writing skills, to write articles or sentences in short, cut redundant words, be aware of apostrophe mistakes, inappropriate use of articles A and Z, inappropriate use of which and that, inappropriate use of professional words, etc. You see an example of non-Anglophone author who submitted article in Scopus Index Journal, and it was published. It's you see highlighted long sentence, poorly readable, so and not understandable for native English speakers. It means this type of mistakes could be corrected at the start, before publication. Now, reviewers should also pay attention to equator network standards. There are some consort, let's say, for trials, Prisma for systematic reviews, etc. At the moment, there are more than 431 reporting guidelines, and we should choose which guidelines specifically relates to manuscript under evaluation. Here is example of Prisma, systematic review. You see authors search different databases, retrieved several thousand articles, but excluded hundreds, thousands, and at the end, they left only 16 articles for qualitative or qualitative evaluation. That's acceptable. My algorithm also was proposed in 2011, and it's still valuable, and it can be used both for systematic reviews and for narrative reviews to have comprehensive search strategy. Junior authors, please refer to these important recommendations when you process literature. One of the main points is to have access to bibliographic databases and to search through at least 2 bibliographic databases, let's say Medline and Scopus. What we should do at the process of peer review? We should be very careful with what we write, and the most important is last point: treat authors as your equals. What we shouldn't do, we shouldn't, as reviewers, we shouldn't convey message about publishability to authors. Reviewers should be acknowledged. You see some examples of certificates. Please take this good example from good journals. Now, about Pablons, I discussed this platform. It's important, and you see examples of ranking reviewers based on their specialty. Let's say in rheumatology, we have more than 1,500 reviewers, with some with several hundred reviewer accomplishments for good journals. And I presented here a list of more than 55,000 reviewers in your country, again, with several top reviewers, with several hundreds of reviewer accomplishments. These profiles are now evaluated by editors, and when they search for good reviewers, they go to Pablon's platform. Reviewers can be asked whether they wish to display information about their accomplishments on Pablons. Usually you should go forward, you should go for it and ask, yes, please display information on Pablons. For Pablon's profiles, you should also have Orcid ID. Reviewers should also know about ethics, how to evaluate and how to keep confidentiality, how then to display information about their accomplishments on Pablons. There is also one important new trend: cascading peer review. Junior reviewers, junior authors sometimes submit not so good article rejected by top journals and cascaded, transferred to other lower ranked journals, and sometimes these articles end up in small or not so important journals. So cascading peer review also can be accepted by top or leading journals. Usually it's from subscription journals to open or open access journals. But there are some limitations. Usually poor articles are enter this cascading. So finalizing this part of presentation or our webinar, I just wanted to draw your attention to some of scientific cartoons drawn by one of my fellows years ago. These cartoons convey important message. Peer reviewers are valuable assets for any journal, and they should be also very careful with what they write, how they evaluate, and no need to evaluate authors. They should evaluate what their authors submitted. So evaluate manuscripts, but not authors, and it will be correct. Any questions?
Dear Armen, thank you very much for your very informative presentation, and thanks for kind words regarding to my social media skills about post-publication article promotion. It looks like we have a few questions from our participants. The first one is, what do you think about open peer review? Is it correct that reviewers know the name of the author of the paper, or should it always be blinded? And the second part of the question, as you know, sometimes blind reviewers could have also a conflict of interests. As an editor-in-chief of Rheumatology International, how do you avoid the blind reviewers' unrealistic comments? Yes, this question.
Okay, so I think there are two parts of question in that one question. One, to open peer review. Open peer review is good for open access journals, general medical journals with numerous contributors, large scientific community. Let's say British medical journals, BMJ journals, encourage switching to open or public peer review. It may increase quality of reviewer evaluations. So it's good. But for some, and now about your second part of question, blind peer review or single blind peer review is good for relatively small communities, let's say rheumatology or communities of specific geographic areas, let's say East Europe, Southern Europe, where all specialists know each other and they can even find out who is a reviewer based on their writing style. So we should be very flexible, and editor's responsibility is to read carefully reviewer comments, cut out all personal comments, nasty comments not related to reviewer evaluation, and transfer these edited reviewer comments to authors, because authors sometimes feel upset. They submitted good review, a good research article, and they receive poor reviewer comments simply transferred by editor without reading, without paying attention to this type of comments. So it's an editor's responsibility also to choose reviewers, best reviewers, and then transfer their review comments to authors.
Thank you very much. And the second question is, do you have any specific advice how to improve English writing skills?
Okay, so I stress that there is no need to refer to editing agencies. Young researchers, non-Anglophone researchers, should learn themselves to write English articles, English sentences. They should learn how to process information through bibliographic databases. It's their responsibility, and they should read instructions, handbooks of English. We recently disseminated a handbook of English writing, and still I personally read and use tips from English writing instructions. So now everything is okay? Everything is clear?
Yes, yes. And the last question is, what is your opinion on how reviewers in the Mediterranean region can be trained and credited to become the best reviewers?
Okay, so in your region, you should increase prestige of reviewer accomplishments. So you should incentivize your reviewers by certificates, by offering other incentives, financial and non-financial. So you should also pick reviewers from best authors, ethical authors. There is no evidence that training reviewers may improve their reviewer accomplishments. So one of the main points here is to pick best authors. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the most important part of today's webinar, how to write articles for rheumatology journals.
Okay, so do we have any problems with internet connection?
Sometimes you have some problems with internet connection, sometimes. I know that you have two internet providers, yes?
So I'm going to share my screen again, yeah?
Yes, yes. Yes, please share your screen with us.
So I'm going
It seems that your internet connection is not stable at that moment. Can you hear me?
I see in interruption, yeah.
Yes, you can switch to your other internet provider if you would like.
Okay, in that case, just 2 minute break, yeah?
Yes, yes. Dear colleagues,
Okay.
our speaker needs 2 minutes break to change internet provider. Yes. Your internet connection is good. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't because of internet connection. It was because of need to restart and
Okay.
to take a short break.
Yes, yes. Let's move on the next item of our webinars, how to write articles for rheumatology journals. Please share your screen with us.
Again, yeah, sharing screen. Okay. I've shared.
Yes, yes, we can see your screen. Yes. And now we can see your presentation.
Good.
Oh, excellent. Let's start.
Okay. Writing an article is an art. Again, we should know that there are some editorial associations. You probably know some of them, but I also wanted to introduce European Medical Writers Association. I personally learned a lot from this association, their journal, publishing articles on how to write articles, on medical right stuff. Again, authors should learn a lot from these two editorial associations. Recommendations of International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Please pay attention to their authorship criteria. We discussed it. These criteria. Then learn about predatory journals. Which journals are predatory? Those without peer review. They should also know about statistics. No need to rely on p-values only. And carefully pick your references. Now, about International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. They have conflict of interest guidelines, and each time you submit article to good journal, you will be asked to submit conflicts of interest forms as well. How we are writing articles. When we write, we should know also about post-publication promotion, citations. Review articles are best promoted. Review articles are well promoted and well valued. Clear? Valued by publishers. Olena, everything is clear?
Yes, everything is clear. You can continue. Yes.
Okay. There are different types of our reviews. I'm going to draw your attention to qualitative systematic reviews and narrative reviews with comprehensive search strategies. Sometimes hypothesis articles are also viewed as mini reviews. What we need for hypothesis articles: evidence-based background, points about your working hypothesis, ethical implications, and possible negative implications. We should also pay attention to rheumatology hypotheses. There are limited number of hypotheses in rheumatology, but hypothesis articles are quite important. Again, we can refer to Equator Network for writing review articles, particularly systematic reviews. You know about Prisma, you know about strategy. We start from searching and retrieving thousands of articles, but end up with only handful of articles, 10, 20, 30. Again, for systematic reviews and narrative reviews, we need instructions, and I recommended you to use to refer to these recommendations. At the start of planning your systematic review, you should register it with Prospero. Prospero registry is a part of York University. There are a number in the field of rheumatology. Some experts write recommendations for their societies, let's say for your pediatric society, and you also need to refer to these guidelines, write guidelines. Now, how to structure titles? Easy if you know that these titles should be short, should be attractive, and should contain keywords. Here on this slide, I present osteoarthritis. You see, it's general rheumatology topic, and attention to this topic is high, reflected in high number of Altmetrics attention score. Slightly less attention to juvenile idiopathic arthritis. It's because of specific scope of interest, number of reviewers interested in this topic. An example of systematic review in rheumatology. You see, you need to put systematic review in the second part of your title. But if it is narrative review, there is no need to put that information. There are different types of article titles. Article titles attractive are well downloaded. Here I present well downloaded, recently published article, my own review article with more than 23,000 downloads, which are poor predictors of citations. If you put geographic term, you limit interest of international experts, let's say from other countries, and downloadability is also decreasing. So pay attention to these important tips. Avoid mentioning about geography in title. How we structure our review articles. Based on searches through bibliographic databases. Multidisciplinary and specialist. But now you probably know about DOAJ. If not, then try to familiarize yourself and use it for your narrative and systematic reviews. It's director of open access journals, DOAJ, and it allows you to retrieve some freely available articles. Additional channels for retrieving articles. ProQuest, EBSCO, Gold rules for writing reviews. Never cite articles from non-peer-reviewed journals. Never cite unpublished items. Never cite textbooks. Replace textbooks with recent journal articles, and you will be right. So stick to these recommendations and find out which items are unacceptable from editor's point of view. Let's say retracted articles are unacceptable. YouTube promotional videos are unacceptable. When you cite websites, pay attention whether these websites are important, valued by international community or not. Sometimes we read preprints. If these preprints from prestigious sites like medRxiv or just archive, you can read, but find out whether the same preprint was published somewhere and try to cite published article, because preprints are considered as unpublished articles. Where to publish? Of course, In top journals, first of all, you should try to target top journals. When you write editorials, these are also valued articles. You should learn again from top journals, top rheumatology journals, let's say. Case studies for junior researchers. Level of evidence is low, but still these are important as educational, didactic articles. There are some clinical examples of case reports which change recommendations of clinical practice guidelines. Let's say Colchicine published, Goldfinger published his letter, small letter, in 1972. It was just a small letter in New England Journal of Medicine, and later on that article was promoted, and now rheumatology, a huge part of rheumatology is based on this letter, colchicine therapy. Now, if you publish case report, you should stick to CARE recommendations. Where to submit case reports? To top journals. Yeah, if these are unique case reports. But most often, it's requested to use case-based reviews instead of case reports. Now, about original papers. Professor Kasapchuk mentioned about IMRAD structure. Yes, we still rely on IMRAD structure for original research papers and systematic reviews. All other types of articles should not use IMRAD structure. So in introduction, you should pay attention whether your article is new, novelty. In methods, you should describe in detail new methods. In statistics part, pay attention to distribution of your parameters. Sample size calculation, whether it's small sample or large sample. In your results section, always try to avoid Professor Kasapchuk mentioned about type 1 mistake. So always pay attention to 95% confidence interval. Never rely merely to p-value. And in discussion part, frankly discuss limitations. In footnotes, put acknowledgements, describe author contributions. We discussed these contributions. Now, after publication, you should promote your article. It's important to promote on social media. But it's also important to know that some articles can contain mistakes and can be even retracted. In open access era, number of retractions is increasing. Even good rheumatology journals retracted because they spotted honest statistical mistakes post-publication. An example of article retracted in an Italian journal because of mistake of junior author who simply copied something from other published article. Apparent plagiarism of text, and he or she damaged the whole article, damaged reputation of his co-authors, senior fellows, by without any intention. Serial plagiarism. When one orthopedic surgeon, again from Italy, again non-Anglophone author.
Dear Armen, I apologize. Could you try without the headphones, maybe?
Okay, we probably should finalize this part, and then again I'll switch, probably because of that. Sorry about that. It's not because of headphone, it's because of participants. Probably they too many participants. So example of plagiarism, serial plagiarism. Recent example of retraction from Adana, because post-publication these authors spotted some mistakes. So there is no any plagiarism, no any violation of publication ethics. The problem is with poor statistics, which wasn't checked before submission. Clear? And about conclusions. Authors should aware of editorial guidelines, and they should target good journals to increase their reputation, and they should be also aware of retractions and should carefully check statistics, avoid plagiarism, and be honest with their readers. Clear? Over to moderator.
Yes, now everything is fine with your internet connection. Okay, and we have a few questions from our participants. The first one is, according to your experience, which part of the publishing process is more challenging for young researchers?
So, authors should be aware of all stages of publication. They should know how to target journal based on some criteria. I discussed this criteria. They should know which journals are important in their field, and they should check proofs. They should be aware how to deal with proofs. And after publication, they should know how to promote article post-publication. They should learn from others' mistakes. So all stages of publication are important for junior authors. So learn how to deal with all stages. And at post-publication promotion, you may use social media, Twitter, to disseminate your scholarly article, to comment it, even comment it. So, and I know that you, Olena, know how important it is to promote article post-publication. It's
even for citations, even for future citations,
yeah.
It's really important. I agree with you completely.
Yeah. And our authors should gradually learn to promote their articles. But of course, social media or editors are also important. Like you know how to promote article, which articles should be promoted, because social media platform is quite sensitive to a number of subjective issues. So we should be very careful with what we promote on social media, how we do it, and how we respond to social media users. Because we know that, let's say, non-Anglophone users are not so familiar, not so skilled with social media promotion. So, and experts like you should learn or should share your experience.
Thank you. And our next question, there are now more than 60 Scopus indexed journals. Which are your most read journals, and which are more friendly towards junior rheumatology authors, and which are the best target journals for pediatric rheumatology fellows?
Okay, thank you for topical question. My personal experience, of course I read top rheumatology journals. I follow articles in these journals for the sake of evidence and somehow related to my own field of interest. But to pediatric rheumatology fellows, I would advise to pay attention to archives of pediatrics. We discussed today this journal, and Professor Kasapçopur also one of the influential editors in that journal. they should also, pediatric rheumatology fellows, should discuss with their senior fellows which journals are important. So it's up to their community. Pediatrics and pediatric rheumatology societies can also have wide list of recommended journals, and they can change flow of articles to substandard journals to good journals. I consider all 64 Scopus Index journals as important, but there are some highly relevant to pediatric specialists, let's say pediatric rheumatology, or some related to some specific interests. Other comments, questions?
Well, any other comments? Let's move on to our last issue for today's webinar. I think that now is everything fine with your internet connection, and you can share with us your screen with your next presentation. Yes.
Okay, sharing screen. Okay. So the last one.
Your internet connection is much better, but if you would like to switch again to other internet provider, we can take a few minutes break if you would like, Armen.
Okay.
It's up to you.
You can stay and discuss.
I think probably you have problems with your headphones. Can you try to speak without your headphones? Let's try. Please take them out. Take them out, your headphones.
You can hear better?
Let's speak again. Armen, can you hear me?
Better?
Not better, I think.
Yeah. We need short break, okay? Okay, short break and then we'll continue. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. Now we can see your presentation. I guess
Yeah.
it's okay now.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, let's continue our webinar, Armen. Your last lecture.
So it's about searches. So at the end, you will share your impression and tell me whether we need these databases or not. First of all, Scopus. You see Scopus?
Yes.
100% of Medline indexed journals are covered by Scopus. But there are many other journals covered by Scopus. Scopus is the largest database with more than 25,000 indexed journals, and it's friendly to non-Anglophone countries. And I know that from your region, hundreds of journals are covered by Scopus. If covered, why not to use Scopus for searches? There are some issues related to subscription, but I know that almost all universities in your region offer you access to Scopus. Its largest citation and abstract database. Clear? You follow me?
Yes, yes, everything is fine.
Yes.
Okay. You should also know about the difference between Scopus and Science Direct. Science, both are products of Elsevier, but Science Direct is digital library of Elsevier, whereas Scopus is a database. Scopus relies on social media metrics. So we should discuss this issue with Professor Kasapchopur and others in more detail. It's important. And all today's participants should learn how to use Twitter channel, Facebook channel for promoting articles of interest and their own articles as well. If authors publish something in a good journal and do not promote it afterwards, it's not good. No one will notice that article. So my suggestion, my main point today is to professionally use social media channels for promotion of your published articles. And even junior researchers can improve their profile, boost their profile by attracting a lot of positive comments if they publish something of high quality. Again, when we search Scopus, and this trick should be used for systematic reviews and narrative reviews as well. We pay attention to a number of articles. Let's say 16,000 articles relate to Behçet's disease. And we should know that Behçet's criteria published in 1990 in Lancet Journal are now well cited, top cited. It's a top cited article. And we should also analyze other articles where all these articles on Behçet's disease are published, let's say in Clinical and Experimental Rheumatology or Clinical Rheumatology and other journals. Annual publication activity is important. Dear junior authors, please pay attention to these moments, these points, and learn how to improve quality of your published articles. Pay attention who are leading authors in this field. Let's say Hasan Yasici Hoca is leading scientist in Behçet's disease with more than 230 articles tagged with Behçet's disease. And you should be, those who are writing on Behçet's disease, should be familiar with most important articles of this author. And of course, it's desirable to analyze articles of top authors in this field. Scopus provides this information. Now, when we narrow our field of interest, let's say Behçet's disease and pediatrics, we know that Yelda Bilginer, I'm sure she attends today's webinar and listens. She is one of the top scientists in the field of Behçet's disease and pediatrics. Where all these scientists publish their articles? In some journals, let's say Pediatrics or Pediatrics International. Why it's important? Because sometimes it is also necessary to take to perform searches specifically through these journals to find out whether they publish something on Behçet's disease or Behçet's disease in connection to pediatrics. Scopus also allows us to compare some journals, citations of some journals. For editors, it's important. Today, some editors also attend this meeting, and they should learn how to analyze using Scopus database. So use Scopus database. I'm trying to convince that Scopus is one of the informative and one of the best platforms for analyzing journals, for searching literature, for finding target journals. Let's say here in the field of pediatrics, we have some well-known journals. Let's say pediatrics with H index of 331. It means that this is one of the oldest pediatrics journal with 331 articles, each cited at least 331 times. Now, a few months ago, Scopus publicized new metrics called CiteScore. Junior research fellows searching the target journals should analyze these metrics. It's based on 4-year citations. So you see an example of CiteScore 2019, and it's based on analysis of articles published in 2016 to 2019 in the numerator, and in the denominator, blue part, we have articles, citable articles, reviews and research articles published within the same years. So it's new metric, but quite important. Here you see example how it's calculated. But this one is the best example. You see Annals, one of the top rheumatology journals, and you see here that latest rheumatology, latest citation metrics depicts 25,400 citations, huge number within 4-year time frame. And when we divide these citation numbers by denominator, 981, again, documents within 4-year period, we see that CiteScore for this journal is quite high, 25.9. And CiteScore is now tracked on monthly basis. So latest one is 25.9. We should also know about Web of Science and one of the relatively new database of Clarivate Analytics. It's called Emerging Sources Citation Index. Startup journals are covered. If they applied, they covered, but they do not have impact factors. Be very careful. If you need impact factor publication for academic promotion to get professor degree, you need to publish in journals with published impact factors. Emerging Sources Citation Index, not so important for professors. Now, you should also know about differences between Medline and PubMed Central. Not all PubMed Central archive journals are covered by highly prestigious Medline database. We have 5,275 Medline index journals, and we have around 3,000 PubMed Central archive journals. There are differences. Remember that not all rheumatology journals are covered by Medline. Only around 17 are covered by Medline. And Medline is important because we need it for structured keywords for professional searches You see here Behçet's disease and thrombosis. And when we analyze articles, we pay attention to mesh terms, how articles are tagged. And this analysis allows us to take keywords and use for more professional searches. PhD candidates should use these trick. I mentioned that sometimes we need to search through specific journals. Here I took example of current rheumatology report and used Medline PubMed PubMed platform to search for items related to pediatrics, and I found 132 articles. I know that Professor Kasapçıoğlu, Professor Sezozan, they frequently publish in these one of the leading rheumatology journals. And to learn more about their interests, I should also perform searches. Now, you should know that Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews is a journal published by Wiley, but at the same time, it's a database of systematic reviews. So far, there are around 15,000 Cochrane systematic reviews. And we should find out which relate to pediatrics. Around 1,300 only relate to pediatrics. We can also narrow our search, put additional word, rheumatoid arthritis or juvenile idiopathic arthritis, and find out relevant systematic reviews. About PubMed Central, there are some good Medline index journals covered by Medline, Scopus, Web of Science, Science Citation Index Expanded, and also by PubMed Central. Here is good example published by BMC, Arthritis Research and Therapy. And you see these open access journal is also covered by social media. And again, we can analyze top articles widely commented on social media. You should gradually familiarize yourself with these altmetrics, donut, or attention ring. Blue color relates to Twitter, one of the most active channel for post-publication promotion. So open access, PubMed Central archiving are important tools for promoting articles post-publication. National Library of Medicine, or PubMed, also linked to another hub of information which is quite important in the era of COVID-19. You see, Lead COVID started to operate a few months ago, and since from January to July of this year, we see that number of articles is increasing. But there is also another, it's a platform, Lead COVID, for analyzing literature related to Lead COVID. And all specialists need that information. Pay attention to gray-colored countries on this map. Mongolia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Central Asian countries do not have any articles on COVID-19. Why? Probably researchers in these countries not so active. But the same story with some Central African and Western African countries. So if you are interested in these countries, you cannot find any relevant articles. But you can see that China is dark blue, and USA also covered in dark blue, which means that these countries publish a lot on COVID-19. So specialists in pharmacy, pharmacology should also use Embase. If they write something related to drug therapies, they should perform searches through Embase. It's part of Elsevier. Neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists should use PsycInfo. It's a specialist database, also highly prestigious. But all specialists may benefit from searches through Directory of Open Access Journals. You see that at the moment there are approximately 15,000 journals covered by DOAJ, huge number. Several hundreds relates to your country, and you see that we can use these searches to retrieve articles, free articles related to Behçet's disease or Behçet's disease and pediatrics. So you can narrow your search. And these are some of tips from me to junior research fellows. And finalizing my today's webinar and presentations, my talks, I wanted to thank Professor Ozgur Kasapçopur, whom I met 20 years ago at the second Familial Mediterranean Fever Congress. And you see that pediatric rheumatology in your country also has its roots starting from 2000. And I am grateful to all pediatric rheumatology and pediatric specialists who attended today's webinar, who share their comments, questions, and going to continue our cooperation in the field of writing, in the field of webinars, research cooperation, and more than that, I think that we should benefit a lot from sharing our experience, from learning from each other. And today's my main point is to use social media channel as quick channel for scholarly sharing our articles. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions?
It looks like we have a few questions from our participants. The first one, as you know, all of the journals have their own submissions rules. Is it possible to create globally accepted uniform submission rules and reference style?
Quick question is no, but there are some journals published by the same publisher, let's say Springer, Nature, Elsevier, they can make your life easier. If your article is rejected by one top journal, it can be cascaded, go to another journal, and without formatting. So this type of cooperation within publishers is acceptable. And it can be a sort of help to junior research fellows. But most of the time, junior research fellows should pay attention to quality of their manuscripts. And they should properly format. As editor, when I see poorly formatted article, I lose my interest, or it's difficult to read. So I ask my colleagues to pay attention why this article is poorly formatted. So it's a good practice to properly format, edit everything, language, graphics, avoid plagiarism, avoid irrelevant references, and then submit. References are also important. I mentioned about importance of properly citing articles, but it's also important to have updated reference lists. So always try to have updated reference lists. Other questions? I see that there are 10 questions in our chats.
Well, it looks like we have covered the most important issues for today's webinar. Professor Ozgur, would you like to say something?
Thank you so much for your great efforts, my close friends. Thank you very much. Your excellent conference for our young residents. Thank you very much for grateful webinars. Thank you very much for your great supports for you and for our association Turkish Pediatric Association and Turkish Pediatric Rheumatology Association. Thank you very much. Amra, closing remarks for you. Thank you. I am sorry, Armen. Please, Armen.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank you, Özgür. You started our cooperation 20 years ago, and I value high our cooperation. You understand how important it is to maintain our ties, to continue our cooperation, to continue arranging these type of meetings to discuss issues of importance to junior fellows from the region. And I am also grateful to you for supporting me as editor in a number of journals. And you know about all these journals. Thank you, Özgür.
Yes. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Oh, Amra?
Yeah. Thank you, Armen. Thank you, Armen, for great and very informative presentations. It was very useful for all of us, especially for young scientists who have many questions on their minds, I guess. I'm sure that it is more clear now and that they are motivated to provide medical researches and to write medical papers. And also thank you, Olena, for the successful moderation of the webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Hope
Thank
to
you.
see you in some other meeting soon. Thanks a lot.
Hope face to face, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care.
Olena, thank you. Olena, over to you. Few words.
A few words. First of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Professor Özgür for inviting us for today's webinar. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm also grateful to Sezen Ozen as well,
Yes.
because she's also a very helpful person, and I know not just Sezen Ozen, but also her fellows. I know her fellows more. Let's say Yezgi Deniz Batu. Yeah, we should also express our gratitude to other research fellows, to Özgür Kasapçopur's fellows, Sezgin Şahin, Kenan Barut.
Yes. They are listening to us now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And they should continue sending their papers, being active on social media. And Özgür, use your own journal as well for sharing impressions, professional cooperation, and inviting more junior fellows to share their professional comments. Thank you very much. And hope to see you face to face next year. Stay healthy.
Hopefully.
Stay healthy.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.